It was the kind of courtroom drama that left everyone in stunned silence, eyes glued to the front, as the fight over the life sentence of a defendant unfolded before them. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than ever, and the players were set for an epic showdown. The court was in session, and the normally composed atmosphere of the courtroom had begun to thicken with anticipation. Judge Boyd, a respected figure known for his calm demeanor and impartiality, sat at the bench, ready to oversee what appeared to be just another day of sentencing. However, no one, including him, could have predicted the explosive turn of events that was about to take place. In the defendant's chair sat a man whose future hung in the balance, a man whose actions had led him to this moment, facing the possibility of a life sentence. The prosecutor, known for his aggressive tactics and firm stance on law and order, had painted a clear picture of the defendant's guilt. To the prosecutor, this was simply another case to win, another opportunity to send a message about justice. On the other side, the defense attorney, a seasoned lawyer with a reputation for standing up for the accused no matter the odds, had already made it clear that they would fight tooth and nail for the defendant's freedom. They argued that the defendant's actions were not motivated by malice, but rather by a series of tragic circumstances that had spiraled out of control. As the prosecutor spoke, outlining the gravity of the crime, the defense lawyer stood with their arms crossed, their face showing signs of frustration. They had heard enough, but what happened next shocked everyone in the room. The defense attorney, usually reserved and calm, suddenly broke the silence. They turned to face the prosecutor with a fire in their eyes that no one had expected. Without warning, the lawyer launched into a direct confrontation with the prosecutor, their voice cutting through the courtroom like a knife. "You don't get to decide the fate of my client based on your own personal vendettas?" the defense lawyer said, their tone sharp, their words calculated. The entire room seemed to gasp in disbelief. This was no ordinary courtroom exchange. This was a full-scale challenge to the prosecutor's authority, a brazen move that left Judge Boyd momentarily stunned. The prosecutor, caught off guard by the sudden outburst, stood frozen for a moment. He wasn't used to being confronted so boldly, especially not in the middle of a sentencing hearing. His eyes narrowed and his jaw tightened, ready to retaliate. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice laced with disbelief. The tension in the room heightened, and the audience could feel the weight of the exchange settling in. "Excuse me?" The defense lawyer repeated, their voice rising, their anger now evident. "You've been playing this case like a game, treating my client's life like it's just another statistic. You don't know the full story. You're too busy trying to prove a point rather than find the truth." Judge Boyd, who had been observing the exchange carefully, finally spoke, his voice commanding the room's attention. "Order in the court!" He barked, trying to regain control of the situation, but the atmosphere had already shifted. There was no going back. The prosecutor, visibly shaken, tried to collect himself, his usual calm demeanor slipping away. "I will not tolerate this kind of disrespect in my courtroom," he said, attempting to regain his footing. "This is about justice, not personal grievances." But the defense lawyer was relentless. "You call this justice?" They shot back. "You want to send a man to prison for the rest of his life based on a few facts and a lot of assumptions? My client deserves more than this. He deserves a chance at redemption, not a sentence handed down from someone who doesn't care about the truth." At this point, Judge Boyd could see that the exchange was rapidly escalating. The tension between the prosecutor and the defense attorney had reached a boiling point, and the courtroom could feel it. The usually composed judge was left grappling with a decision. Should he let this confrontation continue? Was it necessary for the defense to challenge the prosecutor so publicly? The defense attorney, sensing the judge's hesitation, continued. "This is about more than just the law. This is about humanity. It's about understanding the circumstances that led to this moment. My client made a mistake, yes, but that mistake doesn't define him. He's a man, not a monster, and I will not let you destroy his life without at least giving him a chance to show he can change." Judge Boyd's eyes were locked on the defense attorney now, trying to read the sincerity behind their words. He had seen countless lawyers come and go, some better than others, but this was different. The passion in the defense attorney's voice was real, but so was the severity of the crime. The prosecutor, now visibly irritated, stepped forward, trying to assert his authority once more. "Your Honor, we're not here to debate philosophy. We're here to apply the law. My job is to ensure that justice is served. And justice means holding the defendant accountable for what he did, not indulging in emotional appeals," the defense lawyer shot back. "And my job is to ensure that the defendant has every opportunity to be heard, to show the court who he really is. You're so caught up in your version of justice that you're blind to the truth." Judge Boyd, still processing the heated exchange, knew this was no ordinary case. He had to decide what was more important, the law or the possibility of redemption. Could he truly sentence this man to life in prison, knowing the context behind his actions? Or was there room for mercy, even in a courtroom as cold and clinical as this one? The room fell silent as Judge Boyd prepared to speak. As the silence lingered, everyone in the courtroom held their breath. Judge Boyd, his mind racing, leaned forward in his chair. His eyes flickered between the defense lawyer and the prosecutor, sensing that both sides were locked in a battle that went far beyond legal precedent. It was a fight over the very essence of justice itself. The judge knew that the weight of his decision would not just affect the defendant's life, but would resonate across the courtroom, touching every person present. The prosecutor was determined to see the defendant punished, no matter the circumstances. The defense lawyer, however, had painted a picture of a man who was more than the sum of his mistakes, a man who deserved a second chance. But the law, as it stood, had no room for second chances. The prosecutor's case was clear. The defendant had committed a crime, and the consequences were inevitable. But as the defense lawyer had pointed out, was the law always right? Was it just to sentence a man without acknowledging the complexity of his humanity? Judge Boyd's mind shifted between the two extremes. He had presided over countless cases, each with its own nuances, but this one was different. It wasn't about applying the law to the letter. It was about understanding the gray areas, the parts of the story that couldn't be reduced to facts on paper. "Enough," Judge Boyd said finally, his voice calm but firm, breaking the silence that had hung over the room. The prosecutor and defense lawyer both turned their attention to him, waiting for his decision. Judge Boyd stood, and the courtroom fell completely silent. He looked down at the papers before him, where the defendant's life hung in the balance. The faces of the prosecutor, defense attorney, and the defendant were all fixed on him now, waiting for his words. "I've heard your arguments," Judge Boyd began, "and I understand both sides. The law is clear, and the consequences of the crime are severe. But what's also clear is that we are human, and sometimes justice requires us to look beyond the letter of the law to the heart of the matter." He paused, his gaze steady as he looked at the defense attorney. "You've made a compelling case, but the law also demands accountability. A balance must be struck." The courtroom waited, the air thick with anticipation. What would Judge Boyd decide? "I will not make this decision lightly," Judge Boyd continued. "But after careful consideration, I am ordering a full review of the defendant's case. The court will take into account his mental state, the circumstances leading to the crime, and the possibility of rehabilitation." A murmur rippled through the courtroom as people processed the judge's words. The defense lawyer's face showed a flicker of relief, while the prosecutor seemed unsatisfied but resigned. Judge Boyd had not ruled in either side's favor definitively. Instead, he had ordered further deliberation, recognizing the complexity of the situation. The defendant's fate would not be decided today. The battle over his life sentence would continue, but for now, the judge had given him a glimmer of hope, a chance to prove that there was more to his story than just his crime.